Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I am your host, Wendy Nystrom. Today's special guest is Nicole Gardner. She is the retired Vice President of Global Services and a board member of the Foundation for Climate Restoration. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
I am too. You've had a very unique and extraordinary background working at IBM, Global Services, part of their digital transformation, but now you're focused on climate. So what caused that transition for you to go from, IBM and tech to focusing on our climate issues?
Well, even before IBM, I focused on tech and how it can impact the world. In fact, I spent 14 years at the United Nations writing a standard for electronic data interchange that would change the way we do global commerce. And so I have a deep background in global movements, and I did a lot of global work at IBM. When I retired, I had time to think about how did I want to spend my time. Retirement, or I like to call it rewirement, is a transition, and it is an interesting time of life. It's actually a really fun, exciting time of life. And it gives you an opportunity to look back at what you've done and what you've accomplished and what your skills are, and how can, in my case, how could I use those skills and that background to make a contribution to the world, try to continue making the world a better place. That was a big thing about my work at IBM. I worked in health, I worked in digital transformation, and I wanted to continue to be able to do that. And when I looked at the world, and there are a lot of really important things going on, lots of places and ways you can contribute. But for me, climate change is the existential threat. Yeah. If we're not here, none of it matters. And it really is that simple. If we don't survive, then, all these other wonderful things, they aren't going to matter. And so I started there. That's how I got here.
And it's pretty remarkable. I mean, working at IBM, and you said you focused on health, and with the UN, you have a very rich background. And then most people, when they retire, would think, okay, I'm just going to chill out now. I'm just going to go golfing for the rest of my life. You decided to move forward, and starting your work with climate restoration. Could you tell people what the Foundation for Climate Restoration is and what you guys are doing there?
Sure, but I want to back up for 1 second. Yeah. I actually think that's a myth. I don't think most people stop and just start golfing. I think most people my age and older, the people that I know, there are very few of them that have kind of like just stalled out. Most people continue to look at what can they continue to do? What can they do that's more a passion versus a demand? And so, when I think about my son and hopefully someday grandchildren, I want my younger generation and those that come after to have a livable environment, food to eat, water to drink, gorgeous nature to enjoy. So,
air to breathe.
Air to breathe. So anyway, so I was invited to join the board of climate restoration because I have this UN background and because I understood digital transformation and what technology can do. And so that was a skill that was very much needed in our table. And the Foundation for Climate Restoration has some very specific objectives. So there's a lot of great climate work, climate change fighting work going on, trying to figure out how we can address the tremendous challenges that the whole globe is facing. Yeah. However, what's missing is understanding what it will take to get to a survivable climate environment ecosystem. So there's a lot of conversation, and we have the Paris Accords, and we have what everybody talks about with regard to net zero. But lots of people have heard the bathtub analogy, but in case people haven't. So if you think about the Earth sitting in a bathtub and CO2 coming out of the faucet, we've had that faucet on wide open for decades. And the problem is we have filled the tub up and it's starting to overflow with CO2.
Yeah.
There are 1,000 gigatons of CO2 in the atmosphere. And what people need to understand is CO2 has a long shelf life. It can last for 1,000 years.
Oh, yes.
Unlike methane, which can disperse and oxidize in about 20 years, CO2 doesn't leave us. And so that's a big problem. So if you think about that bathtub and the accumulation, the earth is suffering. And as a result, we are suffering. So we need a three-pronged approach. We need to, first of all, we need to shut that faucet off. We need a viable, renewable strategy, and we need to find that tipping point and get ourselves to the point where we can wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. In the meantime, we do need a net zero strategy, and a lot of people are working on that. But the unfortunate part about net zero is it does not address the CO2 in the bathtub.
True.
And that's the third prong. We must pull the drain out of the bathtub and drain it. We need to get that CO2 out of the atmosphere and sequester it. And we need to do that with solutions that are scalable, because 1,000 gigatons is a big problem. Financeable, we got to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And it needs to be permanent, meaning it can't leak out, a few years later. So the foundation is working hard to try to get people to understand that equation, but also to understand the urgency. We don't have decades and decades and decades to study it and figure it out. The mission of the foundation is to get this word out, win the hearts and minds of the world. Let's start here in the US, and get us into a position where we have scalable solutions ready to rock and roll, tested and validated in whatever ways they're necessary by 2030, so that we can take somewhere between 30 and 50 gigatons of CO2 out of the atmosphere for 20 years and restore 300 parts per million of CO2 and 1 part per million of methane in the atmosphere. And that will give us a chance to, as it's coming down, then we will hopefully get into a regenerative process and the earth can heal. And that's going to take a long time. It's not going to happen quickly.
No, it's not.
But there will be relief. During the pandemic, at the beginning, in like the first year when everything was shutting down and we saw all these incredible improvements in air quality and fish returning, and people were like going, what's going on? Well, it was pretty clear what was going on. And there will be incremental improvement as soon as we can get these things back in order. But it's going to take a long time for the climate to really be restored.
Oh, yeah, and absolutely. And I love the fact you mentioned that, we don't have decades and decades and decades to do this. We have known about this for decades and decades and decades, just chose not to. We have plenty of data. We have extraordinarily intelligent people who have been working on this. So quite honestly, we have the information we need. We know that, as you said, the earth is saturated in CO2. And when people say, oh, well, the earth, had high CO2 in the past, true. The earth was also hotter in the past. We were not here.
Right. That's the ice ages. We were not here.
We did not exist, so therefore the planet will continue. We just won't be part of it. That's what we're trying to deal with. And then, talking about your three-pronged approach, this is not a one-solution problem. We need multitudes of solutions. So one of the things with CO2 that is a hotbed topic as of late is carbon capture. Some people hate it, some people love it, some people don't know what it is. Could you explain simply what it means?
Well, simply, it means taking carbon out of the atmosphere, out of the air, and sequestering it. And if you're in Iceland and you have Climeworks there and you have seen these huge machines that are sucking air in and extracting the CO2, that is an example of direct air capture, direct carbon capture, sorry. However, the issue with those solutions is multifaceted. Number one, they are incredibly expensive, really expensive. And I know a lot of people are talking about setting up direct air capture farms across the US, and people are looking at all of that, and that's awesome. However, it also is not very cost effective, meaning that the amount of CO2 they can take out is not overwhelming. And is not going to get us to that 30 gigaton removal rate that we need over the next 20 years. So it means, so simply take carbon out of the atmosphere. How do you do that? You know, sucking the air in is one way. Another way is, you know, there's a lot of seaweed, which is seafood, projects out there. Can we get that to scale in the amount of time that we have to be able to do that? And there are a lot of people discussing that. Another one, which is a little controversial, is called ocean iron fertilization. And that is mimicking what nature already knows how to do. Well, all these solutions, all these nature-based solutions, whether it's planting trees, whether it's seaweed, whether it's, you know, and kelp is seaweed, and whether it's ocean iron fertilization, these are all nature-based solutions, meaning they are replicating what Mother Nature has been trying to teach us and trying to do it at a faster, more accelerated, and more concentrated way.
Yeah.
OIF is trying to replicate what happens when a volcano erupts for instance, in the Pacific, which happened in the Philippines, Mount Pinatubo in 1991. By the way, sand that comes off the Sahara Desert is also doing this into the Atlantic, only it's not at scale. And it's, you know, it's not monitored and measured the way you could do it if we do it. So when that happened in the Philippines, a number of things happened afterwards that were very interesting. Number one, the CO2 levels did achieve net zero without anybody doing anything around the world and for about a year. So we all of a sudden had a net zero situation in 1991, but people weren't looking at it. They weren't paying attention. Well, they didn't. It wasn't important at the time.
They just didn't put the two and two together, because when you brought it together. Yeah. When you brought it up, I'd actually had taken a class, and, you know, shout out to Rick Murray in Boston University. He talked about, in worst class name ever, eco-bio-geochemistry, terrible name. But we talked about that iron fertilization. And at the time I was like, you know, okay, whatever. But he said, you put enough iron in the ocean, you can have another ice age.
Right. Right.
And it's an excessive chemical reaction and he went through the whole thing, which Lord knows I don't remember it. But you are absolutely right. Nature found a way. We just weren't paying attention because we didn't think about it at the time. And honestly, when I took the class in the 90s, I didn't think about it at the time.
Nature has its own processes for cleanup. Our problem is that we are overpowering nature's ability to keep up with us.
Oh, yeah.
If we let nature do its work, then we would, you know, as we did in the past, we were fine. We can survive for hopefully an indefinite period of time at, you know, 280 or 300 parts per million, but we can't at 416 or 423 or whatever Mauna Loa is saying today.
We tipped the scale.
Yeah,
we're out of balance.
Exactly. So we need to find a way to replicate that. I mean, think about it, you know, more fish, less carbon. Sounds great to me. I love that. Now, you know, there's a lot of controversy about it, but it's starting to decrease. And in fact, the Biden administration in the Office of Science and Technology has ignited a marine carbon capture strategy. And there's a work group going on just recently that got started on that. So that's awesome. And that's really important. And we need the government to continue to pursue that. But we also need to get the private sector to participate as well. And some people are upset and saying, well, if we do this, then it becomes more of a net zero. People will use it as an excuse to continue to burn fossil fuels. Well, my opinion is I think we're going to be burning fossil fuels for a long while.
We are.
The global economy is engineered the way it is, but we still need a strong renewables replacement strategy over time. And the bad news is we don't have time for that to catch up with us.
No,
and
we need now.
We must drain that bathtub. We must get rid of these alarming levels of CO2 and give the earth literally a chance to catch a breath and to start to figure out how to repair. And so
Adding on to that carbon capture, though, a lot of, this was a big hot topic at COP this year in the Middle East. Basically, a lot of oil and gas companies are now seeing carbon capture as their golden ticket out of cutting back on fossil fuel production. And no, it should not be used for that. It should be used, as you said, drain that bathtub to get us back in balance. Right. But it's not the solution to just drill more.
It is not the solution to drill more. But, the world being the way humans tend to mess up the world, that may happen for a while. But what's critical is to get solutions in place that we understand and that we can put in action as fast as possible and validate that they do what we believe they will do, and that we find the answer to get rid of the carbon. It has to be multi-tiered. Oh, yeah. There is no single full credit answer. They are all partial answers, and we need them all to work. We need them all to get online very quickly, and we need them to be permanent so that we can rely on the savings and hopefully get ourselves back to a habitable climate in the longer term.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what I love about talking to people like you who are basically in the forefront of these technologies. Basically, these thought groups, they're saying, hey, we need multi-solution. We need many solutions to this one problem. We have to go out and find these people who are coming up with renewable energy ideas, the carbon capture ideas, just different ideas. We can't be doing the same thing over and over again. That just obviously isn't working. And you're absolutely right. Petroleum is not going away anytime soon. We have way too many things that we make out of petroleum. We are addicted to it. So we've got to get back to that balance and finding different ways to do things. Going back to, maybe the way things were done 50 years ago was a smarter way. Not as easy, not as convenient, but probably smarter. Just different ways of thinking. So what's your opinion with the recent COP meeting? Because there was a lot of backlash this year.
Yeah, there was. And it's like everything else. It's got so many angles and twists and turns. But I'll tell you, being on this board and being a part of this movement gives me hope. So one of the reasons I joined was because I was really starting to have a lot of climate anxiety, and it was literally keeping me up at night. And knowing that I'm trying to put my energies towards something to help move the world somewhere positive so that we have actually a hope of getting to a good place. And COP was interesting, but one of the things that was really interesting to me was that for the first time that I can remember, there was a lot of conversation about CO2 removal. You did not hear in the past the level of discussion and serious innovative thinking about what can we do to get carbon out of the atmosphere. Even if you just listened to NPR for the week and you didn't really read or do anything else, you heard it repeatedly being discussed seriously. So it's not it's not a sideshow. It's not something that people are dismissing or they don't think it's worth talking about. People are beginning to understand it has to be part of what the world decides to do in order to save ourselves. And so that for me was a ray of hope, to say that people, broad swaths of people, leaders, movers and shakers in this environment are starting to understand carbon removal must be part of the strategy. And so that's to me, that's a really good thing. It's a change. It's a shift. So that's important.
No, and it's very important that people understand, a lot of people, me included, I was very critical of COP this year because it's more of a networking event with expense accounts. A lot of people are going that really have no interest in climate change. They're just there to network and build businesses.
Like 80,000 people there this year, something like that.
Yeah, and a lot by private plane too, which is just
which is another. Oh my God!
Until we get hydrogen planes and fully electric planes, just no.
Well, I do wonder how many of those planes were fueled by aviation. The more sustainable aviation fuel.
Probably very few
of them were.
Few, if any. We're getting there, but we just need to be smarter about how we go on these conferences in general, because there are a lot of these green conferences coming up. The knowledge being shared is extraordinary, and I love it. And the technology, it's fantastic. But we we need to kind of scale it back. It's not supposed to be this big, not 80,000 people.
Yep. Yeah.
But and that's, going back to your carbon capture, which the sequestration, that's such a hard word for people to say. So
it is.
I love the simplification of carbon capture. Just capture it. That's a social justice issue as well. So people don't realize, when you have pollutants in the air, when you have too much carbon, people are affected, their health is affected, and this is long-term, this is generational. So the fact that we are now tying in social justice the way it shouldn't be separate. Sustainability, all of it, we are all intertwined together. So you actually, I'd love for you to give a shout out to a particular university who's the leader in this that you told me about.
Right. So, well, just first a word about the social justice thing. I think the key piece is that the people who are most impacted need a voice at the table. So that has not been true. And so we need to make sure that as solutions get discussed and strategies get established, that the people who are actually being impacted today actually have a say in how all of this gets designed and developed. And I think that we're very committed to that. That's absolutely critical. And in your local communities, when you're thinking about what's going to happen and what you can do, is to make sure that you remember that those vulnerable communities need to be included. And the university. So I've been on the board of the Business School of American University for 27 years, I think. But AU has an amazing sustainability program now, and both for the university itself, but mostly as an academic major for graduate program. So it's one of the top ones in the country, and it's making a lot of progress, making a big statement, and really focusing on creating the innovative energy and the momentum to try to get us to a better place. So I'm very proud to be associated with AU.
And it's fabulous that, that they've been doing it for so long, and that they're a leader in sustainability as well as identifying social justice, tying it together, but motivating the kids.
Yeah.
So many kids have that eco-anxiety or climate anxiety, and we just need to keep the positive moving forward.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I'm so inspired by the young people that I meet. I mean, I think there's a misunderstanding in the world that these kids are, and they're young adults, are scared and they're not in action, but that's not true. I mean, I meet young people who are very motivated and very driven to do whatever they can do to contribute, and also to understand, what the workplace is going to look like with all of these new solutions and new technologies. So they're double motivated. Mostly they're motivated to survive, but then they also understand that there's going to be opportunity in all of that, and that's really important. So my heart is with them, and I am inspired by different people I meet every single day, and they're amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of the, the younger ones, the kids, what I love the fact is the courage they have to stand up to some of these corporations and say, I'm not going to take this job because you guys are not doing the right thing. I don't believe that's ever happened before in such a magnitude of such a level of large amounts of people saying, no, I'm going to work for this smaller company, make less money because they are doing the right thing.
No, I have to think about that. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there have been, lots of movements in the past. Maybe that's true. And certainly people are definitely feeling more motivated to make their voice heard, for sure. Yeah, and then they're not being quiet about it. They're being very, very vocal. I participated in a demonstration in Lafayette Park across from the White House on July 4th. And it was really exhilarating to be there with, there was a little kid running around there. The mother, must have been maybe in her 30s. People like me, grandparents, I mean, all over the map. And that's what you see when you participate in these activities. You see people of all age groups, which is pretty cool. The intergenerational cooperation that's going to be needed to pull all this off is invigorating to be a part of. And so that's another great benefit of, being in action in this space.
And the invigoration, you're absolutely right. It does kind of inspire me as well when I see some of these guys doing the right thing and fighting for the right thing and just being vocal about it, not harassing and just being vocal and doing it very well. So I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing lately. Going back to your foundation, though, how do people find you or connect with you, or maybe if you need volunteers or donations?
Sure. Yeah. All the above, all the above, like everybody else. So our website is F, like fork, 4, the number 4, C, like cat, R, like restoration, .org. And so that's our website. So F4CR.org. And you can write to me at Nicole@F4CR.org. And I'd be delighted to, you can also look for me on LinkedIn. I'm there as well. But we have chapters all over the world. We've got wonderful group actually in Africa. We have people all over the country. We have people in Europe, and there's some people in the Pacific. So we're always anxious to meet people, talk with people, and get them involved in using us as a channel to work in their local community. So that would be awesome. And of course,
I love the work that you're doing. I mean,
thank you.
The fact that it is worldwide, you're bringing people together, you're bringing the knowledge together and the efforts. That's pretty remarkable, especially on a global basis.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, we're all in this together, right?
Technically, yes.
There's so many examples of needing to find light in the darkness, and we are all one humanity. So sometimes we get in each other's way, and that's very painful. In this case, we've got to find a way to act together. And I hope that the F4CR can be a vehicle for helping people to find their way to do that.
I think you guys are well on your way. Yeah, you guys are doing a great job. So Nicole, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy because the F4CR is not your only foundation that you were involved in. So you are a busy gal. So thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. And, welcome back anytime to give us updates on what you guys are doing.
Well, and thanks for doing this, Wendy, and contributing to getting the word out. That is so important for people to educate themselves and to be informed about what's going on and how they can help. So thanks for doing this, and thanks for having me today.
Anytime. So, thank you again. Guys, I am your host, Wendy Nystrom with Environmental Social Justice. Please check out the Foundation for Climate Restoration. Give Nicole a call. See how you guys can get involved, donate, help, do whatever you can. It's an important organization. I will talk to you guys next time. Take care. Bye.